Hola community, welcome to another episode of Blender Today Live. We're streaming from the Blender Studio, Blender Animation Studio downstairs, Blender Institute upstairs, Blender Foundation down here in the corner, but also part of the building right now is being used by some good friends from the open source graphics community. Blender is hosting this week a workshop that, well, it's hosting. It's basically just giving some of the free rooms that we have here for two of my most favorite tools that I use every single day, which are GIMP and Inkscape. I use them all the time. Everything. The Blender icons are done with SVG files from Inkscape. All the graphics that I do, they're using GIMP, so they are right here. So it's super nice to see, open source tools working together. I'll try to make it maybe towards the end of the week, once it's a 1 week workshop. Maybe make a little video. What do you like to know about if I could bring here people from GIMP or Inkscape? What would you like to know? Let me know somewhere in the comments below. Other than that, we have a bunch of updates this week. We have, well, it's been 2 weeks since we haven't hang out. Since then, Blender 3.6 became beta, so there is a new splash screen. Blender 4.0 became alpha, so we have people freaking out and already making videos about Blender 4.0, even though there is literally, not literally, but there is not really much. Actually, there are less things in Blender 4.0 than in 3.6 at the moment, because developers it's a big change, it's a big number change. So developers doing some cleanups and some breaking some compatibility, which it's good to do it every now and then if you want to keep the software light and responsive. So that has happened. Then what else? Blender. No, that's it. Next, actually, okay. Let's go in parts. It's so interesting where we are right now in Blender in terms of Blender development, because right now there's actually 5 Blender releases active going on, and it's only going to be for a few more weeks. So 293 is still supported until June next month. 3.3 LTS until next year. 3.5 is the current active release, 3.5.1. 3.6 is in beta, and 4.0 is in alpha. That's some activity. That's quite some activity. Gosha asked, why not 3.7? Because 4.0 has to happen. It's been 2 years since we have 3.0, and 4.0 has to. It's good to have something to look forward to. If we don't do 3.7, then we would be doing 3.8, 3.9, but then it will be just like smaller steps. It's good to every now and then have a big release. If everything goes according to plan, 4.0 is going to be huge. Like, there is a new EEVEE, there is a cycles improvement, light linking. There are quite some changes in the pipeline. So I think it deserves a 4.0. But also, speaking of light linking, do you know why the light linking is, well, people have been asking for it for ages, and developers have been thinking about it for ages. Cycles X was like one project that took a lot of time from the developers to do some of the groundwork for a more modern render engine. But now the next project, which you can see here and the thumbnail of this video, is Project Gold. So Project Gold is the next open movie project. That's the code name for the next open movie project. Maybe it's gonna be the name, maybe we don't know yet. But this is the announcement that you can find on studio.blender.org. The team is sharing some of the news about the what is this project going to be about. Is this going to be a photorealistic? No, this is going to be the exploration of a new style that Blender Studio has never done before. So Blender Studio has done some 2D films, like, or 2D-ish looking films, like Glass Half or Coffee Run. Then there has been some 3D-ish realistic, not realistic, but the attempt to realism with like Sintel back in the days, with Cosmos Laundromat, I would say. But there is something in between. The idea is that it's something painterly and something that the team hasn't worked on before. So you're gonna see some of the graphics here. The project is very ambitious. As you can see, it's a girl that actually, the moment you see it, it looks like it's Sintel, but it's not Sintel. It's a similar to Sintel though, but it had the style is supposed to be. This is a paint over, of course. Supposed to be, very very artistic and like paint strokes here and there, lots of compositing going on. But also you may notice that there is a bunch of water. Yep, half of these paintings, I think. Let's see. I said half, but I don't want to spoil anything. So I don't even know how much we're gonna spoil in this. What we can spoil though is what Blender is going to get in exchange for this project. You know, Blender Studio is the creative side of the Blender project, and many of the projects we do here are in order to push Blender. Like actually the main reason is to push Blender development, and some projects push it more than others. This one, it's mainly to focus on NPR rendering, non-photorealistic rendering with cycles, light linking. Yep, this project is going to be the main shareholder of whatever this is related to light linking, so it has to work really well for this project and for in general in Blender. Simulation nodes, yeah, so you can see the film takes place in water, underwater, overwater, water, interaction with other objects. So a lot of simulation nodes it's going to be used, but also maybe simulation. I don't even know how the team is going to tackle the actual fluid simulation. I don't know if they're going to do fluid simulation or just fake it. Maybe an new ocean modifier based with nodes. I don't know. It's a huge question mark. Geometry nodes based tools. That's another big development. Imagine if you could control settings from your geometry node setup using tools like gizmos and tools. Extend the viewport compositor. Yeah, the idea is that the compositor used for this is going to be the viewport compositor, and when you render, to use the same backend compositor. So hopefully this should be fast to composite. Art directable stylized non-photorealistic rendering with cycles. This is a big important thing. That is stylized and art directable, so you can actually tell the shader what to use and what to do. The project is led by the director Jerica Cleland. Jerica is a director, has been involved. Well, you can read about it in the industry for a while, and she's been here for many times at the studio to pitch the idea and to get the team excited about it and to work closer with the team. And it's the first time the Blender Studio finds a female director, so that's also very nice news for the studio overall. And she will be joined by production designer Flora Masurel. The artwork that Flora makes it's insane. So it's French, and you can tell. No, you can't tell. I just saw aesthetic and I said, but yeah, you can read more about it here. The studio pipeline is going to be a big part of this project. You know that the Blender, the same way the Blender Studio shares the assets, the files that make up the film, the team also shares the pipeline. So there is a new website that you maybe don't know about because we haven't announced it officially yet, but it's going to be like another, like instead of just a tutorial on how to make a film, it's going to be the literal documentation that the team uses in terms of the pipeline. So if you want to build your own Blender Studio, like use the exact same setup that we use here for making all our open movies, you can. There is a place when the team is working on it, but you can see like even the workstations that we use, and we use, yes, the studio uses Gentoo. I use Ubuntu here at the moment, but yeah, like, and basically how to run the Blender, even because we run it from the server, SVN, project setups, installation, like how to set up how we set up our computers, and yeah, basically the file types, the file prefixes, how we name those, the characters, the objects, the materials, everything, pretty much everything that the team needs to know in order to make an open movie. It's gonna be recorded here and shared. Anyways, the team is working currently on pet projects, so that is what you're going to see in the films section. It's mainly going to be related to pets until it's over in July, so in a matter of weeks actually. Other than that, I think we are good to move on. So, and yeah, the studio website had a little bit of a facelift these days, a small one, but we are working on it. Where is the movie? Which movie? The movie that we're working on it. Let me share the link actually to see the announcement, and I'm gonna give it a like because I like it. What else? Well, there is a new open movie. I don't know. Oops, not this one. I don't know if I'm. Sorry, there is a new Blender 3.6 beta splash. I don't know if you've seen it, and we shared it on the social media last week. And this is a splash. It's going to be featuring an image from Pets Projects, the current studio film that the team is working on here, and I think it deserves it because it is taking the team are really developing some new techniques and pushing Blender's geometry nodes for shading, and they're going to share a bunch of these techniques on the studio website as well. Okay. What are you doing with Blender with 279? Nothing. Sorry. So I have a shortcut to open Blender. Like I have a shortcut to launch Blender, and I have a shortcut for Blender 2.79 because when I feel nostalgic, I want to open it, and also when I want to see some reference, like it's good to keep this guy around just to be reminded about when some things were better and some things were not. Absolutely not. Okay. I think I mentioned everything. New open movie, Splash 4.0, and let's see what is new in Blender today. So what is in Blender? What is new in Blender today? And let's start with the animation section. So the animation team has been working on a bunch of stuff actually. Oh, I didn't make the thread. I should Blender. Let's just make the thread here in the middle of the live stream because I'm gonna be talking about some changes that didn't make it to. Actually someone made the thread. Thank you, Photo Enix. Actually, you made it. Do you mind if I edit it? Because I need to add this is a violation of your privacy, sorry, but I'm going to actually add all the list of changes, even the ones that I'm not going to talk about, because that way I can mention that there is a ton more changes than I'm going talk about this week. Anyway, sorry. Edited. Thanks for creating the thread. Anyway, if you want to ask questions, leave them in this thread by PhotoEnix. I will try to answer once we cover what is new in Blender today. As I mentioned, the NLA shortcut, the tab shortcut to start the tweak mode in the NLA, it will now perform full stack. It will perform the tweak mode in full in the entire stack instead of just the lower, like whatever is under your under your strip, your active strip. So a little change there in workflow, and I think we're going to be seeing some workflow changes as well now that we're in Blender 4.0. Yeah, hopefully for the best. In in other news, let's talk about the assets in general. The asset view, or well, everything that uses the asset view. When we mention asset view, it's both the asset browser and the asset view in the sidebar of the 3D viewport, for example, when you're working on with the post library. Now it should be more snappy because by default Blender will use smaller thumbnails and the default size is gonna be smaller. So sometimes, yeah, I think it's a good change because you often have more of an idea of how the thumbnail looks after you've seen it many times. So I think a snappy editor is better than a more detailed one. You can always change, of course, the size, but it's better to have fast by default. Next. The next section is actually core C. It starts with the letter C, core 1. We start to see some of the changes that make Blender 4.0 more efficient in some cases, but also breaking compatibility. So this change, it's on the core, on the Blender core, so saving a file. Saving a file now, it's going to write the mesh and movie clip data with a new format. What does it mean? That it's more optimized, more generic, so it uses less memory, for example, and any optimizations in other areas of Blender is going to be and improvements are going to be also applied to mesh and movie clips. However, this means that the file format has changed, and even though 3.6, the LTS Blender 3.6 are going to be able to read this format, if you save a file with Blender 4.0 and try to open it with Blender 3.2, that will crash. So you've been warned. It's better to never open a file with from a newer Blender version in an old Blender version. Always move forward. What else? How's the chat going? What happened to Blender game mode? It was removed in 2019. That was a long time ago. Is it really a soundboard? Yeah, this is the soundboard that I use. And when I want to talk about other changes, well, now we're still in the same section, but I just pressed the Mario pipe button. It's called Linux Show Player, the software that I'm using. Next, this change, it says core, but I think it's just UI because it's just it's a change in the messages that you get when trying to make a path relative or absolute. Now it's going to be a bit more descriptive. Now instead of just say no, it can't be made relative, now it tells you what for. Next. Okay, now I'm going to use it. Cycles. Oh, cycles. Good news in terms of hardware. So, a bunch of ray tracing news this week. First, AMD graphics cards now have ray tracing enabled by default via HIP-RT. Isn't that great? Although I think it's only for Windows. Let's see. Unfortunately, the drivers for Linux, I think they're not there yet. So let's see. And then have ray tracing acceleration on Windows. Yeah. Unfortunately, did it say anything about Linux? No. No Linux, yeah, no Linux support, as HipRT is Windows only still. So it's not on Blender, it's on the drivers. But usually drivers for AMD are not bad. Did you notice any change in the sound around me? Because the air conditioner just shut off, and I hope this turns on, otherwise you're gonna see me melting here. Speaking of ray tracing, but not AMD, Intel via one API has now also enabled ray tracing via hardware by default. So great news on that. I don't know which graphics card supported though. It's probably the top ARC ones. But yeah, ray tracing. The next change is more like a PSA. I was reading some news today, and some of these commits. I didn't get to read all of them, so actually the later commits, we are gonna be reading them simultaneously, like learning about them simultaneously. But this one, when I was reading, the title says mesh anisotropic BSDF node into the glossy BSDF node. So it seems to be just a merging of the two nodes. So we don't have the anisotropic BSDF node anymore, because apparently it only worked for glossy and only made sense there. So now it is part of this node. So from the user point of view, you're going to have the anisotropy controls in the glossy BSDF instead of the node itself. However, that would break compatibility, since older Blender versions don't know how to handle the anisotropy input of the BSDF node, of the glossy BSDF. Therefore, this commit technically removes the glossy BSDF node using the versioning to replace them with anisotropic BSDF and renames that node to glossy. So internally, Blender is doing some weird stuff here. But from the user point of view, actually, the glossy stays, but internally is using the anisotropic. I guess this is adding some technical depth, but it also removes the sharp distribution option and replaces it with GGX. Sets the roughness to 0 and disconnects any input to the roughness socket. Okay, this is the versioning code internally. Let's see. I'm really melting here. Do you mind if I... Oh, I think I should... I think I turned it off. It was off. It was just not strong enough. You'll see me melt slowly. We are still in cycles. Let's talk about EEVEE. The team is working really hard on EEVEE next, but there are some EEVEE new features, and this one, it's even, or even, in 3.6? Yeah, it is. So release notes, Blender 3.6 beta. This got in like last minute. So the news is that Blender 3.6 will have in EEVEE a transparent render pass. The new transparent render pass contains the alpha blended surfaces. This allows combining them with the opaque passes. This only supports monochromatic opacity, so no colored alpha. But still pretty good, because it allows you to do compositing much more easily, instead of, well, why wouldn't it be? We don't have the transparent render pass like per se, or this is alpha. Let's see, should be called alpha, which is how it's called in cycles, for example. So no, it says transparent effect. Deliver alpha blended surfaces in a transparent pass. Interesting. So it's just the alpha blended surfaces, but why wouldn't it be alpha? How is it in cycles? Interesting. So what is the use case that you would use for this? The next change is in, well, actually no, there is a ton of fixes this week. If we go to BlenderToday, you're gonna see the list is huge. It didn't include any this week, as in mentioning, because not only cleanups, bunch of cleanups, but also in the fix section here, it's like all over the place. Pretty much every area had some kind of fixes, regression fixes, performance, missing defaults. SVN was exporting with a different line thickness even, SVG files, and Estonian language fixes. I didn't know we supported Estonian language. That's nice. And much more. Also, there are some fixes in areas that I haven't mentioned yet, and they're pretty exciting. So let's move. The G for geometry nodes. All right, so you heard about simulation nodes. That was added in 3.6. That's like the big feature of 3.6 is simulation nodes. They are fully integrated with Blender, and they even have a new option in the general. In the geometry nodes workspace, there is now a workspace, like an editor for animation. So not only it will have the geometry nodes space open, but it will also have the timeline open, so you can see actually what's going on. And also, if you're doing any kind of simulation, you're gonna be able to see here the cache for simulation nodes. You can toggle it off if you don't want to see it, but you can. The simulation caching is now optional. So because it takes some resources to actually calculate the caching, it's now optional. So for real-time use cases, storing the geometry state in memory at every frame can be prohibitively expensive. For example, if you're doing like a VJ session, just like streaming live what you're doing with simulation, you don't necessarily need to store the geometry in every frame, which can be very expensive. So you can skip it altogether. This option is in the is per object, and is available in the baking panel. So I believe that is part of the physics section of each object. You can toggle on or off the cache. So if you don't want it, you can have it. Okay. The next change, this is the opposite. So if you don't want caching, you can disable it. But if you want really good caching, you can, as in simulation subframe mixing. You can now calculate subframe simulations. Actually, there is a video here that shows it in detail. And at first it's hard to see because the timeline here is covering it, but I'm going to enable the loop and I disable the controls. And as you can see, this is one frame, but actually you can preview that sometimes the playhead is in between the frames and still calculates it. So nice. This is mainly for motion blur, for example, because Cycles, for example, can make use of the subframes data to calculate better motion blur. The next changes are related to performance. The Vertex extrusion mode, or extruding geometry, now can skip edges without attributes, which means save some resources. And in some tests by user Higsas, there is a 10% improvement in speed. Nice. Another performance improvement related to keeping data and not calculating too much data gives a tiny improvement from 3.6 to 4.1 frames per second when extruding a 1 million face grid. So yay, faster extruding. The other change has to do with the mesh to curve node. This one is also now slightly faster. 9%. I will take 9. 100% any time of the week. The other change, oh, this one, new node alert in town. It's called sample volume node, and there's a picture here by Eric that says it all. Basically, you can give it a volume and you can sample the data from that volume. So as you can see here, this is a plane, I believe, a grid, and it's basically taking the volume data and putting it into attributes. That's so cool. Sample volume, it takes a volume geometry and a grid field and a position field as well. Nice. The next change is a UI update, very small one, but it's done by community contributor Alexander Rastino, and it's a small it's just a very small thing. So basically the components in the separate component nodes now are matching the same order as in the spreadsheet. Very tiny change, but those are what makes a UI tidy. The legacy behavior about removing about the realizing instances in geometry nodes is gone now, so it's only going to be possible to have the same the behavior from that it was possible at the moment in the like if you don't change any way of calculating this realized instances, you wouldn't notice a difference. But if people were relying on the old way of removing using realized instances behavior, then this may change. Another 4.0 breaking change, improvement, I would say. And another improvement, which is disabled by default because it's an experimental change, is that there is a new node called signed distance, and it's related to the SDF volume, the volume nodes setting in the preferences, which if you haven't heard about, you can toggle on by going to interface, developer extras, then experimental, and there is a new volume nodes here, and you can read more about it in this task. But yeah, volume nodes. The new node is called signed distance. It's an input node that can be used to refer to the distance grid of an SDF volume. It returns a float attribute field input called distance, which can tell volume nodes which grid to get. There is a ton of changes in internationalization this week, by the way. And there are more changes in geometry node. I'm not mentioning all of them, but there are more, as you can see. It is a full list. And internationalization also, there is so many, like quick fur has been is now translatable. Some socket extractions has been fixed, and a lot more. What else? Oh, this change is it's in the letter I, but it's just because the title starts with introduce, and this is not something that affects users directly at the moment, but it's something that is nice to share. So Blender, the Blender website has been using Google Analytics over the past few years, and because it's what what most people were using back in the days, and we never changed it, but we want to change and to not have third-party stuff for something so simple, like for example to know how many downloads Blender has on the website, or how many people actually see the thanks page, or how many people actually, for example, we thanks to that, we know that a lot of people go to support and to the tutorial sections, and the tutorial section is a joke because we basically don't have anything there. And every time we see that, we get sad because we want to work on it. But anyway, those are the type of analytics we make use with the Google Analytics. But Google Analytics is way too much for the simple thing that we want, that we use it for, and also it's not very. I don't know. Since we don't control it because it's Google Analytics, it's not very privacy friendly with our standards. So we're switching to another system. It's called Plausible. Plausible. It's an open source analytics system that is super simple, and it is open source, and you can host it yourself, and that way you have full control over this, and you don't have to give cookies to anybody, and that way it's nicer. So yeah, we are switching all our websites to that, and that's why there was one change in the Blender code, that blender.org. Any link that points to blender.org. So for example, if you click in the manual here, there is a UTM source, so we can see that it comes from Blender 4.0, which is so handy. This only shows the Blender 4.0. It doesn't know anything about you, anything about nothing. Only knows that it's Blender 4.0, and that is so handy because that way we can know if there is actually people even using these links at all, or we can just remove it. Or even people are using the alpha a lot, or people are using Blender the LTSs or not. Actually, we don't know if people are using the LTS. We keep working on them. We keep releasing one every month, pretty much, and supporting them for 2 years. We hear people saying that they use it, but we don't know exactly. So this little change is non-intrusive, and it helps Blender in general. Okay. I like to give cookies to people. I'm not a huge fan of cookies, and but yeah. The next. Well, yeah, but and speaking of the cookie, so this analytics actually it's part of an analytics website as Blender is hosting, and it's called Analytics. So it's usually if you use an ad blocker, you're not gonna be part of the like if I go to blender.org and I check, because I have an analytics block, like I have maybe it doesn't. I have, I think, yeah, if I enable the U block, it's gonna block the analytics. So everybody that has the ad blocker enabled, they're not going to be part of, like, for example, when you download Blender, it's not gonna say like you downloaded Blender. And we made that on purpose. Some people changed the website analytics to be like something other. So there's not blocked by ad blockers, but I think that's up to the people that if you wanna help Blender in that sense, then you can unblock the domain. Next, library override. Yeah, there was some changes in library override, and also math, but let's go to mesh. In mesh, there is a number of changes related to moving things to more generic stuff and performance optimization. So this case, the bevel weight attribute, it's now generic. So it means that it's no longer the special attribute that it's that it was coded back then, hard coded for bevel weight and for edges and vertices. Instead, it's using the generic system. So as a user, what does it change? Well, one, it should be more, in general, changing these values should be easier, more performant, and less memory, and the same benefits that you get by using more generic attributes. However, from the user point of view in the UI, the difference is that now this is going to show up in the list of attributes, and also it should be like changing any other attribute via geometry nodes. So yeah, you're gonna see it in the list of attributes. And this is a breaking change, and forward compatibility is not preserved. And if you're using a Python API add-on, for example, to change this, it's also gonna be broken. But yeah, these things are expected in Blender 4.0. a lot of, pretty much every add-on that has to deal with like mesh stuff will have to be updated for Blender 4.0. The next change also, more removing of API stuff. It's just a PSA mainly to mention that face or vertices custom data API has been removed. So more things to update. If you have an add-on, I would say don't update it now. I mean, if you have enough free time, of course, go ahead. But otherwise, just wait until Blender 4.0 goes beta, which is when the API is frozen and there will be documentation on the breaking changes that you need to change. For example, usually most of the time just a search and replace will be enough, or just changing the method, and there will be documentation about it. Another removal was the Sculpt Vertex colors. Remember Sculpt Vertex colors? Well, back in the days, actually, this is a commit by Pablo Vazquez a long time ago. It was a huge change that involved the new vertex colors, but also like the API plus the change itself. It was a huge change, 2,000 lines of code. Yeah, pretty big. Over time, the Sculpt Vertex colors became just regular attributes in the attribute system, like regular vertex colors. So this is no longer needed. Although this was never officially exposed, it was just experimental. Worth mentioning if you're using actually, I have a patch that was checking for Sculpt Vertex colors, so maybe I need to update it, and actually I don't need to do, yeah. It's actually a good change for me because I was doing some exceptions if Sculpt Vertex colors, then I don't have to do that anymore. Yay, thanks for the cleaning. The last change is a micro performance improvement when in edit mode, every update of edit mode, well, actually it's not tiny. It's tiny in the sense that it's only 6 milliseconds saving, but it's on every update, every update. So over time, you're gonna save like a full second in your life. No, more. More removals. In the nodes section, the with hidden property has been removed. It was never used, but useless even. Yeah, has been removed. I don't know why. Maybe it was used by... No. Basically, it allows you to change the width when the node is collapsed. Let's continue with the letter R for Realtime Compositor, which we should be calling Viewport Compositor instead of Realtime. But the Viewport Compositor now has support for 3 new nodes. One, the Convert Color Space node is now supported. The Plane Track Deform as well, so more nodes related to motion tracking has been implemented. And last but not least, one that the community has been asking for, Denoise. It is now supported by the Viewport Compositor. So let's see, the denoiser executes on the CPU, and we pay for the CPU GPU round trip to memory. So this is not real time as one might expect, and it's just a temporary implementation until OpenImage Denoise supports GPU execution, which should be soon, I heard, because they're working on it, and that is also part of the real-time of the ray tracing improvements and GPU support for overall OpenImage Denoise. Nice. Sculpting has seen some fixes as well. There has been a few refactors, and the S for Sculpt, yeah. So there is 3 fixes in here. Transform. Okay, this might be a big one. I have mixed feelings about this. I think I remember seeing posts on right-click select or other websites, the community requesting to be able to navigate while transforming in the 3D view. What does it mean? That at the moment, navigating the view, like transforming, is a modal tool. So you press G to to transform, and you can't rotate the view anymore. You can't do two things, right? There, you either move the view or transform. Not anymore. There is a setting in the key map that it's disabled by default, but you can turn it on if you prefer this to have both. Why is it disabled by default, and why is it a preference in the key map? Well, because Blender already uses, like, to rotate the view, Blender uses middle mouse. And when you are transforming, middle mouse is actually used for constraining to different axes. The preference in the key map changes some of that. So let's go to key map and turn on navigate during transform. Actually, during should be capitalized here. All right, so navigate during transform. You enable that, and I guess it only shows up for it's a pity that only shows up for the default one and not in the industry compatible. No. Yeah, anyway, so in the default key map, you enable navigate during transform, and now while you are, for example, I press G to move, and I press middle mouse button, I can rotate and continue transforming. Rotate and continue transforming. Why did I say that I have mixed feelings about this? It's because it can be a bit weird. Like if I have the cursor in the center of the object and I move around, it's a bit, it works most of the time fine. Like it kind of follows the position, and I can do things I couldn't do before, like moving sideways and then just bring my cube with me further and further apart. However, when doing some kind of zooming, it kind of trails a bit off from the position of the mouse. And I don't know if that's a bug or it's just the nature of it. Also, the jumping, I'm not a huge fan. That when you start rotating, the cube is somewhere else and then it goes back to the position. I guess it's just the nature of the tool. I don't know how other softwares do it, and if it's even possible. But yeah, I don't think I would be enabling that on my personal key map, and I will definitely not turn it on by default for the rest of the world because it's a huge breaking change. However, if you want to read more about it and maybe contribute me bug reports that you find, you can see the task. Well, it's linked in the description of this video, but also in the task you can see here the changes. So the proportional editing, instead of being the wheel, is now going to be alt panning instead of just panning. The constraint, instead of being middle mouse button, are going to be alt middle mouse button. So basically the same, but just adding the alt key. Okay. UI, the U for UI. Okay, this list, actually, this list we're gonna read it together because I couldn't read them all on time for the live stream. So first, let me have something to drink. It's mate. It's not some kind of drug, it's mate. It has even its own emoji, so it's legit. Rename copy vertex group to duplicate vertex group. Okay, here's where the changes in 4.0 start. That some tools change name for consistency. For example, the copy vertex group operator was called copy, but in Blender, copy usually is used for copying things over to somewhere. And in this case, it's just a duplicate, right? When that operator just duplicates, doesn't move the vertex group to another object or anything. In this case, it's a good change. So thank you, Daniel. More. Edit mode, options, panel, cleanup. Ooh, what does it mean? Again, we are reading this together. Auto merge is a property of the transform operation, so it seems more convenient to have this option bundled with the transform settings. Another thing is that the live unwrap. Okay, let's see how is this. So Okay, auto merge is still outside. Good. I thought this would be added to the to the options, and I was like panicking a bit because I think auto merge should be exposed. And we could even expose other things. Okay, so this is auto merge. That's good. And the mirror is still here. So what has been changed? Live unwrap option has no real relation to the transform. Yeah, you could argue. It's true. Therefore, remove the auto merge subpanel and create two subpanels for the options panel, transform and UVs. Merge the auto merge settings into the transform subpanel, move the live unwrap to the UV sub. Okay, so it's a bit of organization. So from the user point of view, not much has changed. It's just restructuring things around. Add-on developers. Every time something like this happens, like subpanels are created, it's a good opportunity for you to say like, oh, now there is a UV subpanel, so I can shovel my settings in there instead of everybody fighting to use the available space in the header of Blender in general. I don't think you can see the cursor anymore. Something happened with my... Yeah, no, you can't see the cursor anymore, fortunately. I don't know what's going on. If it's a setting... No, in... Anyways, the next change is related to use fixed width for grid view. Yeah, this is another change UI related to the grid view item. So the asset view that I talked about before for the post library in the sidebar in the 3D viewport. Now the width is going to be fixed in order to, instead of stretching, in order to prevent jumping of the user interface. I have mixed feelings about this actually, because even though this makes the UI feel more stable, because the thumbnails are not changing size, it's a bit of a waste of space if you don't have if you don't fill in the space for, if you have three thumbnails and you make them the window slightly smaller and the third one doesn't fit, then you lose a whole column. But I can imagine this was a bit jumpy. Maybe the UI should just, if there is a UI list with grid view, maybe we should just snap to the width of the thumbnails. Maybe. Speaking of previews, the text under the previews is now center, properly center even. Nice. For the yeah, before it used to be eek. There used to be this gap, and now it's actually center in the UI. That's so sweet. Before, after, nice. Interesting. Do you think Blender 4.0 is going to be the release where we get rid of the freaking F for fake user? I hope, I wish. I have a document that I've been working on, and I would like to propose to the developers to see if they can find time and we can finally get rid of that fake, the F and the shield, and yeah, not getting rid, but actually replacing with something that is a bit more easy to understand and doesn't lead to losing data. How about it? Although I heard it's a big change, so wish me luck. Ooh, this one, configurations. These people will really like that, because I've seen comments that people, that some users really don't like the, speaking of deleting, actually, when you delete something or accept, or sometimes Blender is a bit too careful, and if you have an object and you delete using the delete key, then the object is gone. But if you press the X key, it's not. It asks you about like, hey, do you really want to delete this thing or not? Because there's a reason for that, because the delete key is usually in a place in the keyboard where you actually have to go and almost you have to look or feel around that area. And that means that you really want to delete. However, the X key, it's the X key. It's next to the Z in most keyboard layouts. So it is easy to press by mistake. So that's why it has a as a confirmation dialog. However, you can get rid of this confirmation dialog in the key map. So if you search for delete, for example, if I search delete and in the viewport, in the object, well, I can just go to object. The delete with X has a setting here that is grayed out because it's using the default, and it says confirm. If I disable this setting, now when I press the X key, Blender just deletes without confirmation. Many people prefer this change, and this confirmation dialog setting was only for this operator. It has to be added on a per operator basis. But now you have great developers such as Harley that are very thoughtful of the community and went ahead and added this confirmation setting to more operators, such as keyframe clear, keyframe deletes. Oh, that one, animators are gonna be saving some clicking times there. Now your mouse is gonna last longer because you can disable that keyframe deletion. Although keyframe deletion has options or not. Yeah, it has delete, clean, or clean channel. So you're gonna lose that and it's going to execute delete, I guess. Keep an eye on that. So the same in edit mode, X toggles like everything. Blender could be maybe more like a bit smarter on this, and if you are in delete mode, only delete vertices, and edge mode and F faces. However, if you want to do limited dissolve, well, this is Control X, but some like edge loops, maybe you go and are like in Control E. I don't know. I don't mind this menu usually. What I do usually is I use shortcuts. So if I want to delete edge loops, I do X and G. XG, and then you delete because the G key is underlined here. Anyway, this is a list of the operators that now can have no confirmation. The confirmation can be removed, disabled. And now that more operators have it, maybe we can have a global setting in Blender that disables confirmation dialogues for that. We do have a setting for the save, I think, in interface. No, in save and load, there is a save prompt. So we could have a setting for prompt of other operators. What else? Improve description for the shape key pin. What is this? New tooltip provides more useful information about so the shape key pin option was always show the current shape of this object, and now it's called only show the active shape at full strength. Mixed feelings about this. I don't like the word strength because shape keys don't have strength. Shape keys have value. If you enable them, this is this value. If you leave them out, it's value. So this should refer to value, not to strength. It's not a brush. But anyway, and this is why things should go via the UI team. Or actually have a pull request so we can comment about this instead of just committing. Okay, next. UI changes in the NLA. The solo button, also known as star, this star, which doesn't mean favorite, doesn't mean rating, it means solo in Blender. What could be a new icon for this? Let's brainstorm at some point together. However, the big change here is that this used to be on the left side. Also, doesn't make much sense. We don't have that anywhere in Blender. We usually have these toggles on the right, and now they are on the right. Thanks to Harley. Thank you, Harley, for making the Blender UI more consistent. The NLA could get some love in the terms of UI this release 4.0. Okay, you know what is getting love though? The USD Export. Wow, you can now export the new hair systems in Blender. That's awesome. Did this make it to... Yes, this probably made it into 3.6. Let me find out. I really hope. Release nodes, 3.6, pipeline assets and IO, USD. Yes, export support for the new curves and hair in USD. Amazing. That's so cool. Thanks to Sonny Campbell from Unity. Unity is contributing so much to Blender these days. So cool. So yeah, curves. Is there anything to see about this? And you're right, there is added the USD. The goal was to enable export of the new curves type, but Hans mentioned that there is already a feature utility function. This very trivially enables the legacy curves for export too, so I have included the change in the patch. Oh yeah, because there is already a way to convert those. So nice. And speaking of USD, now there is an option to add a root primitive, also contributed by the community, by Ashley Raglis. Says, yeah, it's a USD export string parameter. If this option is set to a well-formed prim path, for example, world, a transform primitive with the given path will be added to the stage as a parent of all the exported primitives. It will allow transforming the scene by this root node in other applications, and is also required for loading the exported scene as a reference in other USDs. So yay for interoperability. People are suggesting to have this S solo button with an S. Yeah, guitar icon for solo. Nice. Air guitar. S icon. Maybe. But the thing is that solo is... You can't translate the S, right? And I guess solo is like a word that most people would know, even in other languages. But yeah, that's a problem with using letters, is that it doesn't get translating. It's like the F key in like the fake button. Next. For UV. Well, a bunch of changes in the UV section this week. Actually, I can show it from here. So UV. Use correct UV packing method when all or none islands are pinned. So this is a fix, I assume. Some combination of refraction and various locking options will not work. And also fixes some crashes. Fix UV packing problem with rotate and scale line search. Fix UV overlap problem during UV packing with scale locked islands. Fix packing problem with locked position and large island count. It's good that people are trying this in heavy files. Another change, improve correctness of the UV packer. What do you mean by correctness? Fast packer wasn't treating locked islands correctly. Would be nice to have a before and after, but let's say it's improved. During the packing, add a progress bar and the ability to cancel. Nice. Uses the job system in Blender. So Blender has a job system that any task can add to the job, and Blender manages that job and the current job, and it makes sure that also if you press escape, it's going to try to cancel the current job, and this is now using it. So cool. Simplify UV packer, improving performance, efficiency, and fixing bugs. All right, performance probably faster. Let's trust this. What else? Okay, I'm really running out of time now, but let's see. The VSE, there's changes in the video. sequence editor. Add go to current frame operator to view menu. We didn't have that. Okay, we didn't have that in the view menu. The operator existed, just wasn't in the view menu. Smooth transitioning for the retiming tool. This feature implements smooth transition between two retimed segments. Nice. Is there a video or something? No, but again, sounds good. Who doesn't like smooth transitions? What else? Oh, and this change is related to the transform that I mentioned, the transform change. Well, there are now utilities that add-on developers or other tools in Blender can use in order to provide navigation in the operators. So that's nice. It's not only a change that was made in Blender itself, but also can be used in other by other developers. And that is it. I think I have one last change is just mentioning the libraries. Libraries have been updated. Python in 3.6. There is a whole lot of changes, but for example, in this commit alone, Blender 3.6 gonna have Python 3.10.11. OpenEXR is going up to 3.1.7. Image IO also from 2.4.11. USD major release change from 22.11 to 23.05. Nice. And much more. Actually, there is a task for that where you can read more about it. It's called Library Changes for Blender 3.6, and you can see the entire list of libraries that will be updated for this release. Okay. That is all for today. Let's see. I don't have a voice anymore. I haven't done this in 2 weeks, and now I'm without a voice. Okay, let's see if I can. What time is it? How long I've been? 1 hour 10. Okay, let's do 5 questions, just so I don't feel bad for neglecting the questions of the community. So let's see which ones have the most votes, and read those. So this one by Gabriel5578, and these users look legit, so let's go with this. The first question is, hello Pablo, how are you doing? Doing great. A bit warm today, as you can not hear. There was an issue with the airco. I have recently watched the Insider and Inspiration Tuts video about that talk how Disney and Pixar animate, make and simulate hair. Since Blender is focusing on hair and simulation right now, I would really recommend you to check out this out. They seem to do a good job of giving an overview without being too long. Nice. And cool. I'm gonna pass it along to the developers. Thank you. Let me open this in another tab so I just have it. Slow Kid says, if someone wanted to work at or collaborate with the Blender Studio on their open movies, do you by any chance know how could he get in contact with them to propose himself? Is there any chances of this? At the moment, there is no call for portfolios, but I would what I always suggest is to just get yourself make yourself visible out there. Tweet about your work, put it on ArtStation, put it on Blender Artists, for example. And I mean, I don't say you should be emailing directly Ton or people from the team, but sometimes that even in at least in the past, sometimes that even worked. The problem is that, yeah, sometimes it's just way too many people and you wouldn't get the answer maybe that you expect. But the team is always alert in the sense of who would be maybe a good match for the studio, the project that we're working at the studio at the moment. However, for now, and because the Blender Studio website is doing, I would say, enough to survive, but not enough money to hire a lot more people yet. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. I mean, the team is working on making the pipeline documentation better, making more like sharing more. Basically, the whole project, everything that is new about the project is being shared. All the production logs, everything that people are making here, blend files, videos, concept art, everything is being shared here. But yeah, maybe the community wants something different, maybe more direct tutorials. Maybe we should focus more on making tutorials. But yeah, anyway, the answer is make yourself visible in the community. Photo Enix says, Hola Pablo, thanks for editing the post. Thank you for posting. Have you ever thought about giving Blender versions a nickname that follows a theme like some other companies do, Ubuntu, Android, Apple? Not sure what theme this could be, but might be fun to consider, and it could give each release a bit more personality. I actually quite like the idea. I like how WordPress does it. WordPress versions, they have names based on jazz artists, I think, or musicians. I think it's only jazz, but yeah, they have like the names of the artist as their versions. Ubuntu also does it. Android did it. We used to have versioning, that kind of versioning for open movie projects with fruits like Project Durian, Mango, and so on and so forth. We haven't done that anymore, and I miss it. What would be a theme for Blender? Blender 4.0 Pablo. No, Pablo is a weird name. Back in the days, people would say, oh, Pablo Picasso. It's also not a great example, but oh, Pablo, I don't know. Now people say Pablo Escobar, and it's like, come on. Sansul says, okay, how many questions are we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Question number 4. Hey Pablo, says Sansuls. Will there be just solvers as one node in the future for physics, or solvers will be just group nodes made with low-level nodes available in Blender? In my opinion, the second option is better, because Blender will ship with those group nodes, then people can just use those. But for those who want to dig deep, they can just change a few of the underlying nodes on that solver group instead of changing Blender's code, or just create very custom simulations from scratch. I think ideally the second option would be best, but yeah, I can also see how having maybe more ready to go nodes can be maybe, I don't know if more efficient, but also easier to ship. We've seen this in the past with modifiers, with some developers trying to make modifiers completely in Blender, like a solidify modifier node, but that would work better just by splitting it into parts. I hope we can go with the splitting it into parts as much as possible, but yeah, I think some other software do that by compiling the node tree before, so I don't know how that will translate to Blender itself. But yeah, I would prefer always low-level nodes that are not visible at first by the user, but if you like, I don't know, double click, go in, tab into, you could have more info. And the last question, Blender Studio production log videos have, hello Pablo, Blender Studio production log videos, they have too many monitor videos and too few screenshots. Please do everything in your power to change that. Gracias. The production log videos, production logs of pet projects. And yes, I think I know what you mean. The Blender Studio has been releasing the production logs. Actually, the last one was 5 days ago. Maybe you haven't seen it. But yeah, you want more of this and less of this. I think there is benefits on both. This is sometimes it's for the, well, this is showing a podcast that Pablo is watching here. but it's also to give a bit of context and to show the overall situation and to give a bit more context. You could argue that this, now I don't know if I'm just clicking, I happen to click on parts. There is everywhere I click, it's mainly like, this is fantastic. Like, this is showing the Kitsu view and them having a conversation here. Then another screenshot, or maybe what you saw is the previous episodes, because previously we gave these notes to Haru, who is making these videos, about having more content on the screen. And I think now there is a fair balance. You see, there is people talking, and then there is screenshots, people talking, screenshots. Also, people suffering, sleeping, or just not having a great time, and then a mix of this as well. So you would argue that having a bit of context is nice, but also if you want to have the full images and screenshots, it would be to support the project. Join Blender Studio. It's $10, $11 per month, and you get access to everything that the team is working on, with explanations, with details, with like everything, and yeah, anything and everything, all the props, images. You can talk to people, you can leave them comments. I think it's a good way to support Blender if you want to have something in return related to the film. But I see what you mean. All right, that is the last question. What is the last? Okay, there is one more on screen. Let's do one extra more. I wish you all and Blender heads a wonderful week. I have a simple request, feature request. When using a movie source, we have the option to match the frames with the movie length. Can we have this feature in the shader GeoNodes editor? Yes, I think this highlights a huge problem we have with the a consistency problem that we have with the whole movie source, image sequence source, is that it's not unified. So the fix should be not to bring that to the other editors, but to just have one editor, one node that has that feature, and it brings it from other places. All right, I am melting. Look at that. I'm wearing the Blender 2.8 t-shirt, and we're talking about Blender 4.0. What a time to be alive. Let's call it a day, shall we? And see if we can do again this together. Let's see. When is next? Next week is going to be the last episode of May, 29th of May. After that, we enter June, which is the month of Blender 3.6 release. It's also the month of Annecy, the Annecy Animation Festival. If you're going to be there in the beautiful city of Annecy in the French Alps or surroundings, you should pay a visit to the Blender team. Other than that, it's just time is flying. We're almost near half of the year already. Is Blender 4.0 gonna make it till the end of the year? That's a good question. And Blender 4.0 is supposed to come out at the end of the year. Would it happen? Find out in the next episode of Blender Today Live. Watch your ear holes, because I think the volume is a bit high. I hope it wasn't too bad. I hope you have a great week, though. I hope you get to blend everything that you wanted to blend, and even more. Have fun, and I'll see you again next week, same place, same time, for another episode of Blender Today Live.